As president, I'll defend our cherished way of life.
These are images of Donald Trump's America today.
In Joe Biden's America, you and your family will never be safe.
America has always been full of hope and resolve.
Go and vote.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer for the Washington Post, and welcome to First Look 2020 Presidential Debates, Washington Post Live's one-stop shop for news and analysis from last night's presidential debate. And what a debate it was. This morning, to kick things off, I'm joined by Chief National Correspondent and veteran political reporter and editor Dan Balz. Dan, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to dispense with the opening question that I had, and I'm just going to read the opening paragraph of your fantastic column in today's paper where you write, "No one alive has ever seen a presidential debate like Tuesday night's unseemly shoutfest between President Trump and former Vice President Biden. 90 minutes of invective, interruptions, and personal insults. It was an insult to the public as well, and a sad example of the state of American democracy 5 weeks before the election." Go on.
Well, I mean, I think we know what happened last night. I mean, the President of the United States decided to come in and in essence, try to destroy the format of a debate that he had agreed to the terms of. And he set the tone for this debate. It, in many ways, was not that surprising, other than the fact that it was farther over the top than one might have expected. Vice President Biden, I think, came to expect a somewhat more traditional debate. I think he knew that he was in for a night in which the president was going to be hectoring, but probably not to the extent he did. And he was grappling with it. He was more focused, obviously, than the president on the message that he wanted to deliver. But it turned into chaos. And Chris Wallace, the moderator last night, who I have a lot of respect for as an interviewer and a moderator, was not able to keep control, in large part because the president was not willing to be brought under control. And so you had 90 minutes of, as I described it, just a terrible mess of a debate, and one that reflects poorly on the presidency of the United States and to some extent our democracy.
Dan, on the question of Chris Wallace, was there any effective, ethical way for Chris Wallace to rein President Trump under control? You hear a lot of people saying on Twitter last night, on television this morning, cut his mic or go to break or do all these things. Was that even possible?
I don't think so. I mean, cutting the mic in a debate like that would have been nearly impossible because there was so much crosstalk between the president and Biden. So, I mean, if anybody was trying to control the mics, they would have been, just zap, 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 zap. That would have done a disservice to viewers. I mean, you would have just had, you would not have been able to hear much of anything. I don't know what a moderator can do in that situation. For these general election debates, the moderators, as Chris Wallace had said ahead of time, try to generally stay out of it. The format is designed with 6 segments, 2 minutes for each candidate at the top of each of those segments, and then the candidates, can kind of mix it up. And the moderator in a normal debate can sit back to some extent, follow up when necessary, but basically let the candidates do it. But what we saw last night is if you have one candidate in particular who is willing to simply, bulldoze everything, there's not a lot you can do. I mean, he kept pleading with the president, at first in more polite tones and later in, just total exasperation. So I don't know what he could have done or what any moderator could have done.
So Dan, let's pretend that that last night was a normal debate as much as we can. And I'm going to ask you normal debate questions. And that is, for each candidate, what was their strongest moment and what was their weakest moment? Start with President Trump.
I think for President Trump, the strongest moment was when he went after Biden on some law and order issues. I mean, that was his most sustained statement about an issue that he thinks will be valuable to him in trying to bring the election in his direction, which he's not been able to do. I think his worst moment, obviously, was at the end when we got into the discussion of the ballots mail-in voting, white supremacy, Proud Boys. I mean, that was as low a moment as one can imagine in a debate, and a low moment even for a president who's known for going low in moments like that. I thought Biden's strongest was when he was speaking to the camera, to the voters, when he was turning away from the president and to some extent from the moderator to make a direct pitch to basically say, you know what this president is like. You know you can't trust him. You know he doesn't know what he's talking about. But here's what you should be thinking about as you vote. I thought those were moments when, and clearly that was part of the debate prep. I mean, you could just see that he knew that that was a way to try to elevate out of what was, an otherwise, kind of a mess of a debate. I thought his weakest moments were, frankly, when he kind of lost his own temper. I mean, you can understand why somebody in his situation would finally just kind of say, will you shut up, man, as he did. But I don't think that in the great scheme of things, that was necessarily that great. But I mean, again, you can't measure this debate in a kind of a symmetrical way. I mean, we know where the responsibility lies for how this debate unfolded.
One of the things I've also seen people say, both on Twitter and also on television this morning, raising the question: should Joe Biden even show up at the next two debates? Because last night was such a spectacle. What did Jake Tapper call it last night? A hot mess inside a dumpster fire, inside a train wreck. Do you
And
think?
Dana Bash went further in words that we probably shouldn't use here on Washington
Yes.
Post.
That is correct. It was vivid. Let's just say that.
Was vivid.
But do you think that the next two debates should go on?
Well, I think that really is up to the candidates. I can't imagine what the next two debates would be like given what happened last night. The Biden campaign apparently said last night that he will show up for the next two debates, as he had promised to do before this debate happened. But you're right. There are a lot of people, including any number of Democrats, who think he ought not to do that. I think we'll have to wait and see what the president's reaction is, what the president's team's reaction is about whether these next debates go forward. They're on the books. They are tradition. But after what happened last night, I think everybody will approach this with a lot of trepidation.
If I remember correctly, the next debate is supposed to be a town hall forum style. So there will be, citizens asking the candidates questions. Do you think that last night's performance will play in a town hall format?
No, absolutely not. And I mean, all candidates ahead of those town hall debates are prepped to be even more respectful than they might otherwise be, to avoid some of the contentious exchanges that might occur in a debate simply with a single moderator. They are told that this is something that can turn people off. So for President Trump especially, this holds potentially great peril, but he obviously doesn't worry about that, Jonathan. I mean, I think we're trying to judge him by the tradition of the way candidates approach these debates. And you have to wonder what's really in his head about what he thinks about this. The idea that he could say the things he said all through the debate, particularly at the end about the Proud Boys, and have any hope in that campaign that they are going to be able to win over female voters in the suburbs is folly. And so I think that the president's team is going to have to think about, okay, what are we hoping to get out of these debates if in fact these debates go forward?
Well, Dan, hopefully you'll come back after the after the next debate, and we could talk about whether that was a hot mess inside a dumpster fire, inside a train wreck. Dan, we got to go. Thank you so much for coming on First Look this morning.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Let's go over to the opinion side of the Washington Post, where you'll find my colleagues, Ruth Marcus, Washington Post deputy editorial page editor, and contributing columnist Hugh Hewitt. Ruth, Hugh, thank you very much for being here. Welcome.
Good morning.
All right, Hugh. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, so I'm going to start with you. Who do you think won last night's debate Was there even a winner?
Amy Coney Barrett won last night's debate because Joe Biden said nice things about her and refused to answer the question about packing the court. The loser, I'm a little tired, friends. I did 4 hours of debate last night. I just finished a 3-hour show, 86 callers, half thought Trump won, half thought Biden won. Everybody thought Chris Wallace lost. I have sympathy for Chris. I've been in that position. But if this doesn't kill the Presidential Debate Commission, nothing will. They need to have people who will not interject. They have to just let them go at each other and not try and direct it, because it really hurt Chris Wallace's standing with the public.
Hugh, let me continue with you on that line of on this question about the debates. Would it be better to, as the question I asked Dan, should the moderator have had the ability or the commission to either cut the mics or go to break to sort of have a reset, or is that not even possible? Should there even be rules for debates?
That helped us with the CNN debates when you hit bing, 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 and then that kind of is an audible thing. But the only solution is for you, Jonathan, and me to moderate and ask our opponents questions, or for Ruth and I to moderate and crosstalk, because the audience came away, I don't know if you two agree with it, came away with the distinct impression that the president was debating two people, not one. I want to give Ruth I don't want to take all the time.
Yeah, go ahead, Ruth. Have at it.
I think Chris Wallace in the past has done as good a job as any interviewer of holding the president to account and following up with questions to him. But I think even Chris Wallace could not contain the raging beast that was President Trump last night. And I think the notion that he failed by being, and it was it was not his failure, it was just a failure of the format in the context of dealing with Trump. But the notion that his problem was that he was too interjectionist and too assertive in trying to regain control of the debate format is just, with all due respect to my friend Hugh, 100%, 180 degrees opposite from reality. We needed to figure out a way, if it was possible, and it's very difficult to do more to get the president to follow the rules that he had agreed to use. Maybe the next debate moderator needs to be a preschool teacher.
Ruth, I'm going to stick with you and then go to Hugh Hewitt with the same question, and that is the same question I asked Dan. The strongest moment and the weakest moment for the president and former Vice President Joe Biden. Start with the president, Ruth.
Well, I did think that some of the strongest moments for the president was when he put some difficult questions, or the moderator, who he thought did too much, put some difficult questions to Vice President Biden that he didn't answer. So the president's strongest moments were pressing the vice president on law and order, saying what law enforcement groups backed you, pressing him on being clear about whether he would pack the court, pressing him on what his position is exactly on the Green New Deal. But I have to say, and I would just incorporate absolutely everything that Dan said. Those moments for him were just so few and far between. The really outrageous moments. I have a list here, particularly one thing, respecting the election results, the Proud Boys stand by. But one thing that I think Dan didn't mention was the really grotesque assault on Beau Biden by saying, I didn't know Beau Biden, and then shifting to this attack on Hunter Biden. It was beneath even Donald Trump.
Hugh.
Strongest moments are the same. Unfortunately, Chris Wallace threw a lifeline to the vice president when he could not come up with a law enforcement agency. That should have been allowed to go its course. The president asked a question. The vice president has no answer because he has no support in law enforcement. It would have been telling. Chris Wallace cut it off. The strongest point for the vice president was talking about Beau Biden. His weakest point was serial denials of Hunter Biden. But I must say the weakest point for the president overall is he stepped on his own lines repeatedly. And this is, anyone who's talked to him knows, he will not stay on one subject long enough to follow through. On the lockdown, he scored significantly because there's a huge divide in America between how to proceed with the virus. But the most important moment of the debate, and I don't know if Ruth agrees with me, the vice president is obliged to answer if he will stack the Supreme Court. That is a republic threatening move. That is a destabilizing undermining of the rule of law. Kamala Harris dodged it twice after the debate. The vice president said, I won't answer it because it's controversial. If I were the moderator, Steve Scully, who I think I spotted at Dulles trying to leave the country this morning, I would just stay on that until I got a question answered, because the American people deserve to know if the republic is going to be undermined by the next Democratic president.
Ruth, republic threatening. To me, what was republic threatening was the president of the United States, one, telling the Proud Boys to stand by and stand back, and two, casting doubt on what the election results could be on election night. I'm just going to put that out there. On another question, one thing that came to mind, the children. President Trump spent a lot of time going after Hunter Biden. Joe Biden didn't return the favor and go after Trump's own children, who, according to published reports, are doing a whole lot of things that are, let's just say, questionable. Should Joe Biden have gone after the Trump children?
No, I don't think getting in the muck with President Trump gets you anything except for being mucky. I do think that Hugh deserves an answer to the question that he posed. I think the question of how you think about the future of the court and whether you would expand the size of the court in the wake of what I consider to be the theft of 2 Supreme Court seats is a totally legitimate question, and it's a legitimate question for Vice President Biden to be pressed on, and I completely understand why he doesn't want to give an answer, and so that's the normal give and take. I do think that, I want to sort of go back and disagree with something that Dan Balz said, and it goes to the question of whether Vice President Biden should have gotten in the muck and gone after the president's children the way the president went after his children, and in particular Hunter Biden. I think that under normal circumstances, having a nominee call the sitting president of the United States a clown and telling him to shut up would be just alarming and breathtaking and a very big mistake. I think under these circumstances, it was warranted, and I think that people were looking for some energy and some pushback and some fierceness from the vice president. And I was, in the context, I'm not normally in favor of incivility, but in the context, I thought it was appropriate and justified to push back in that way. And just to go back for 1 second, I think one question is, where do we come out in this debate? What's the outcome? And going into the debate, President Trump was on his heels. The trajectory of this election is not going well for him. The dynamic of this election is not going well for him. He did not do anything to change that dynamic last night. If his hope was that he would press the vice president into making a terrible mistake and having some gaffes that could be used, he had a few, but he didn't fundamentally rattle the vice president. On the other hand, if people were looking at this debate and hoping that the vice president would be able to just put it away so we could all get some sleep in the next several weeks, we're not going to get some sleep either.
Can I add something to that, Jonathan?
Well, wait 1 second, Hugh, because I want you say what you're going to say, but in your response, I want you to follow up on something that Ruth said about Vice President Biden and his, calling the president a clown and telling him to shut up and saying like you're a racist. And that there are a lot of Democrats who looked at that and thought, yes, there's some fight. They want their candidate to fight back. Of the callers to your program this morning who said they thought Joe Biden won the debate, was that one of the reasons why they thought he won the debate?
No, they thought he won the debate because the president lost it. Polite people hated that debate. You are polite. Ruth is polite. I am polite. We hated that debate. Polite people hate that. But my 30,000 feet disagreement with Dan Balz is the debate reflected the country. We are all going to go to lunch like Washington Post opinion writers will do and chuckle at each other. The country is deeply divided. Social media reflects that. The debate last night reflected it. There's no getting around it that we are at a turning point for whether or not we are going to go towards freedom or towards socialism. And I don't mean that as a pejorative about socialism. I mean the European model, the AOC model, the Kamala Harris model, or back towards the Reagan model of, all things. Donald Trump is an imperfect messenger of freedom. But what we saw last night, I thought very perfectly reflected, my gosh, 100 conversations I've had with old friends. They don't stay civil because the country's talking about deeply rooted first principles, and it's going to get hot.
Can I just jump in and so vehemently disagree with Hugh on the choice facing the country? It is not between freedom and socialism. It is between freedom and the destruction of democracy. A president who cannot condemn white supremacy, who cannot pledge, as every previous president has, to respect the results of the election and to commit to a peaceful transition of power. And this attempt to conjure and transform Joe Biden, a moderate Democrat, into some kind of socialist AOC boogeyman is just, maybe it's all that Republicans have to argue with, but it's simply inaccurate. And as he said last night, and of course, everyone changes over time, and the Democratic Party, I will acknowledge, has shifted towards the left, but Joe Biden is who Joe Biden is. He is not AOC, and attempts to paint him that way are going to succeed, as well as attempts to paint him as senile, which he is not. And I think we saw that last night.
I mean, as Vice President Biden said at the debate, when pushed on this, when, challenged, that he's afraid of the progressives and he'll be a puppet of the progressives, he said, I am the Democratic Party right now. And to Ruth's point, Hugh, Joe Biden is nowhere near being a far left socialist candidate. He beat folks in the race against him who were part of that wing of the Democratic Party. So why even go down that route? I don't understand.
It has the additional benefit of being true. What you and Ruth will not deal with is if someone will not reject court packing, if someone will not reject the abolition of the legislative filibuster, they are setting up the country for what was in essence the last 70 years of the Roman Republic, an increasing destruction of the mores, not of rhetoric, with which we are very familiar from 1968 and other times, but with fundamental premises about how we govern. So when you say he's not AOC and he's not Bernie Sanders, I say you're wrong. You are denying the reality of what court packing means. And I think court packing is going to be the number one issue for the Republicans, other than the lockdown, which some people out there in America were saying, lockdown, my kids have to go to school and Joe Biden wants to lock us down. But to me, a constitutional law professor, and to you, opinion writers, it's this court packing issue, and he is as radical as anyone else because he will not denounce it.
Ruth,
disagreeing about the size of the court does not, and disagreeing about the legislative filibuster, which is not in the Constitution, and neither is the size of the court, does not turn you into an anti-constitutional socialist. And I would love to have conversations about the size of the court and the role of the court. I really doubt that is going to be the driving issue for folks out there who are worried about the ability to have their kids return to school, who are worried about their jobs or getting their jobs back, who are worried, frankly, about what they saw on their television screens last night. I don't think there's a lot of mom and pops sitting around the table, this breakfast table this morning, talking about the size of the Supreme Court.
Go ahead, Hugh.
I was going to say, I disagree with that because I talked to them this morning, and people do worry about Joe Biden dodging that issue because they know what it means. But go ahead, Jonathan.
I wanted to stick on the Supreme Court since we have a little bit of time left. And Hugh, I know you have to go in about 4 minutes, but let's talk about Supreme Court nominee Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She was up on Capitol Hill yesterday.
You just said justice. I like that.
Nominee. I said Supreme Court Justice
I've
nominee.
been saying justice, so
I just want to be clear. I'm not putting her in the job before she actually gets it. But can we talk about Hugh, you called it the destruction of the republic to quote unquote pack the court. To
Yes.
Ruth's point, the president has stolen now 2 seats on the Supreme Court. What will it say about the court and the independence of the judiciary if/when Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed as a 3rd justice to the Supreme Court by President Trump? Ruth, you start.
well, for me, and Hugh is going to bristle at the notion that these court seats were stolen, but I am going to double down on what you said there. And I think that the president, if you're going to talk about threats to the court, like court packing, which I'm actually not sure under these circumstances I would call a threat to the court. Talk about threats to the court by a president who talks about the importance of having a justice on the court who is going to vote his way in an election that he seems determined to dispute if he loses it, as seems likely. That is an assault on the integrity of the court, as serious as the expanding the size of the court. They're one and the same.
Well, I would like everybody to go and get Ruth's book, Supreme Ambition. And I say that not just to shine her on, but because the first half of Ruth's book is about the 30-year battle for the Supreme Court. Every side has taken every advantage they could for 30 years. No side has proposed, we lost that particular round, let's blow up the court. I am convinced that if we change the number of the Supreme Court, it will unleash the hounds and it will change again and again and again. And that's what I mean by undermining the rule of law. And I think Ruth's book perfectly summarizes how invested America is in the stability of the court, and it must remain so invested. And to politicize it, as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is doing, is so deeply irresponsible. It makes Donald Trump rhetoric appear as a footnote in the history of America.
I was going to give Hugh the last word, but Ruth, go right ahead. Ruth, you have the last word.
The hounds were unleashed when Merrick Garland did not get even a hearing many, many months before the election and the inauguration of a new president. The hounds were unleashed when, as people were voting, when a justice died, the president having backed and Mitch McConnell having backed, denying the incumbent president the ability to fill the Scalia seat, is now rushing through the appointment of, and yes, she is going to be Justice Barrett, a justice whose addition, my book, and thank you for plugging it, Hugh, is called Brett Kavanaugh and the Conservative Takeover. This is cementing that takeover for decades to come. So the hounds are out, and the way Democrats respond to the loss/theft of those 2 seats, I have a hard time, and I've written this, and it was hard for me to say it, I have a hard time arguing against finding some temporary way to remedy that outcome through maybe a temporary expansion of the size of the court, coupled with some other institutional changes. This is not one side comes to this with clean hands. There's theft on the part of the Republican Party of these Supreme Court seats.
And Hugh, out of respect for your time, because I know you have to go, we got to go. We're out of time. Thanks so much for coming on Washington Post Live's first look at the first 2020 presidential debate. I'm going to put that in air quotes. Ruth and Hugh, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Jonathan.
You and I can do this all day long, but probably.
You could, but I'm not letting it happen. See you guys. And thank you for watching. We'll be back at 11 a.m. Eastern today with a special program on the digital divide featuring Congresswomen Kathy McMorris Rodgers and Donna Shalala. And then at 2 p.m. Eastern, join us for the first and a special series on the election we're calling Voting Matters. Our guests will be the Secretaries of State from Colorado and Washington, as well as Tory Burch, about their efforts to turn out the vote in November. Once again, I'm Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer for the Washington Post and you're watching Washington Post Live. Have a good day.